When I was in middle school, my favorite movie was Step Brothers. While some kids' parents were taking them to see Transformers or Star Wars,
"Don't you dare badmouth Star Wars, that was all accurate!"
I was on a pure diet of movies from comedians like Mike Myers, Jim Carrey, and Adam Sandler. My family's favorite meal in this comedy diet was any movie starring Will Ferrell. And you know what the best Will Ferrell 2000s comedies were? The ones he wrote with Adam McKay. Adam McKay and Will Ferrell first became comedy partners when they met at Saturday Night Live. And after some great years there, they finally got to shine in their first creative baby together, Anchorman: The Legend of Ron Burgundy, directed by McKay. They would then go on to write massively successful movies in almost every aspect, like Talladega Nights, Step Brothers, and The Other Guys. But that was kind of a while ago at this point, so that begs the question, what happened to them? Their last movie together, Anchorman 2, was over 10 years ago now, and since Adam McKay was never really in front of the camera, it might be hard to know exactly what he's been up to lately. Well, he's busy directing Oscar-winning political dramas now. The guy who taught us if you ain't first, you're last has now taught us about the housing market collapse of 2008 with The Big Short, the life of Vice President Dick Cheney with Vice, and most recently theorized what would happen if a meteor was going to kill us all, a not-so-subtle metaphor for climate change, in Don't Look Up. Don't get me wrong, The Big Short is pretty good and enjoyable, but both Vice and Don't Look Up left me wanting the old McKay and what his comedy has brought to my life. It just feels like McKay's craftsmanship is a little more messy when he's making a movie about something of the utmost importance. So in this video, I want to take a look at how an Adam McKay comedy compares to an Adam McKay political drama / satire, and how the massive tone switch from Adam McKay isn't as massive as you might think. And eventually, I want to answer the question, does Adam McKay need Will Ferrell to make his best movies?
What in the hell's diversity?
Well, I could be wrong, but I believe diversity is an old wooden ship that was used during the Civil War era.
Let's get this out of the way right now. Adam McKay's writing has always been politically topical. He started as a comedian and improv guy in Chicago, which eventually scored him a writing job at Saturday Night Live. And it only took him a few years to become head writer, which is nothing to scoff at. At SNL, he really shined with new cast member Will Ferrell, but he also had a huge hand in writing the cold opens. If you don't watch SNL, the cold opens are very frequently political satires. You know how people always say, oh, SNL used to be better when it wasn't as political, but the truth is SNL has always been political? Well, the same exact thing can be said about Adam McKay. Adam McKay made better movies when he wasn't as political. Well, he always has been political. You see, we remember how funny these movies are, how ridiculous the characters are in it, and some of their most famous quotes, but we tend to forget what exactly these movies are about. Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, the NASCAR comedy starring Ferrell, John C. Reilly, and Amy Adams, doubled as a Rorschach of the country's political divide during the Iraq War, without ever mentioning the Iraq War. His body of work has, underneath it, an analysis of power, a social commentary on inequities, says his friend David Sirota, the Guardian columnist and a former Sanders advisor. Anchorman is one of the funniest movies ever, but there's also deep social commentary in there about the media. Not to mention, the first Anchorman really dives into gender workplace inequality and how it affects the male psyche.
Our co-anchor.
What? No. Oh, no. Oh.
No!
Where Step Brothers explores a generational divide, as McKay and Ferrell imagine themselves as 40-year-olds who just can't seem to grow up like their parents' generation could.
You have to learn there are consequences for your actions. You're next, mister. You understand me? Yes, sir. Get off me!
And then finally, The Other Guys apparently has an entire parable hidden in it about the 2008 financial crisis.
And we were like, hey, can we do a big comedy that's kind of about the financial collapse? And we made The Other Guys. And the whole, I spent hours and hours with Chris Henchy designing the whole movie to be a parable for the financial collapse. And then we put the movie out and no one noticed. And it was like, the only thing was in the end credits, I did these end credits that were pretty nakedly about the financial collapse. And I was like, That's weird. How did no one notice?
McKay has always made movies about real-life topics that matter to him. Some of them are just hidden behind the absolute comedic genius of Will Ferrell. Here's an accurate recreation of what it is like to watch Anchorman: The Legend of Ron Burgundy.
You really want to know what love is?
This country was built on what we call American family values.
Gonna find my baby, gonna hold her tight, gonna grab some afternoon.
Excuse me, what are you doing?
As time went on, more women wanted the opportunity to work at the same jobs.
This city needs its news. Oh, and you are going to deprive them of that because I have breasts?
When women did show they could be as good as a man at common jobs, men felt... A lot of men then doubled down and exhibited what we like to call toxic masculinity.
Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
I'm expressing my inner anguish through the majesty of song!
They named it San Diego,
Which, of course, in German means a whale's vagina. Afternoon delight.
This combo made for really funny films that still felt like they had value beyond the laughs. I could play funny clips from these movies all day, and some of these quotes are still in my vocabulary. I mean, the improv skills are just beyond masterful. And Ferrell's comedy and character acting is a huge part of the pairing that is comedy and political satire. We all love Ron Burgundy. He is a legend. But we kind of forget he is a little misogynistic and a shitty person at times. And credit to Will Ferrell there, he tends to give shitty people redeeming qualities somehow. I mean, the same exact thing can be said about Ricky, Bobby, and Cal, or Brennan and Dale. Okay, while McKay is responsible for some of the political nuances in the film, I don't want to give Ferrell all the credit for the comedy in these movies. I mean, McKay was hired as the head writer for Saturday Night Live for a reason. As a director, McKay would show up to set with a list of one-liners and read them through a bullhorn for actors to try out over multiple takes. In Anchorman, Ferrell's vocal warm-ups before going out on air went from throat-clearing noises to wacky improvised news headlines. Adam would yell things out off the top of his head, like, "The Human Torch was denied a bank loan," recalled Paul Rudd, who played Burgundy's best friend. And Will is good at keeping it together, but I remember that one got him.
The Human Torch was denied a bank loan.
Okay, so there are clearly politics infused into these films, and these moments in our country's history were the reason they were created. But the biggest difference between these new and old McKay eras is the tone of how these topics are presented. Ferrell's performance and presence brings a certain ridiculousness and hilarity to the topics presented. The satire in these movies is turned up to 100. Characters are obviously unrealistic at times, while still making us care about them as real people. It's a crazy balancing act that Ferrell manages to do with his most insane characters. Make us humanize and care about a person who is ultimately inhuman. These types of characters don't really exist in The Big Short and Vice. I mean, they're movies based on real people. But with Don't Look Up, McKay finally tried to return to these types of characters. And in my opinion, it was a massive miss.
There was an immediate backlash that quickly became a meme.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, that's terrible. Is that even allowed on the internet, or I think that's Photoshop, Kate?
Before we dive into this section, I want to point out I am mainly focused on Don't Look Up. The Big Short and Vice aren't perfect in my opinion, but they do achieve what they set out to do without any big qualms for me. There are little things that irk me, like McKay's way of presenting information in The Big Short reminds me a lot of like Deadpool maybe, but that's super subjective, and a lot of people find that to be the movie's biggest strength. So let's dive into Don't Look Up. I wrote a shit ton of notes as I watched along. So it starts to really explore how obsessed we are with celebrity culture and how we cope with bigger events happening on social media. And don't get me wrong, I completely agree with the point being made here. I think people care way too much about celebrities and the inner workings of their lives. The issue with these scenes is I cannot tell if it's supposed to be funny or sad. It feels like it's definitely supposed to be funny based off of the punchlines that they're telling and the fact that we get Ariana Grande playing basically a character from Andy Samberg's pop star Never Stop, Never Stopping.
You guys discovered a comet? That's so dope. I have a tattoo of a shooting star on my back.
That's terrific.
But none of it made me laugh. It almost gave me the feeling of an episode of Black Mirror. And then there's almost anything in this movie that relates to the internet. Not only the poor editing montages of people's social media posts, but also the ultimate misunderstanding of memes and meme culture by Adam McKay. It makes little to no sense to me why Adam McKay, a comedy writer, cannot fathom why the internet responds to world events with comedy. In fact, I'd say that's almost word for word the job description for SNL head writer. Shouldn't McKay understand comedy's purpose in our society? There shouldn't be a difference between an SNL sketch and a funny tweet. One isn't necessarily more valuable than the other. I mean, I personally prefer an SNL sketch, but I got to admit there have been tweets that have made me laugh or made my day a little bit better. Humans deal with grief in different ways, and one of those ways is comedy. Maybe explore why we do this stuff instead of just saying, oh, look at humans, they attach to celebrities and laugh at serious situations. Everyone's super fucked up. Okay, my next complaint is how Adam McKay can't really decide if he wants to do one of his newer movies, a drama, or one of his older movies, a satire. He's really stuck in the middle on this one, and it is mainly the characters that are doing that for him. You see, he listed Dr. Strangelove as one of his inspirations for this movie, and this movie definitely has some Dr. Strangelove-esque characters in it. You got Meryl Streep's president, Jonah Hill as her son, and then Mark Rylance's ridiculous Tim Cook parody. But the issue is the two main characters are not satirical at all. Having non-satirical characters in a satirical world definitely gets a little bit weird at times, especially when those two characters are the main characters who you're supposed to be viewing the lens of the movie through. You see, these Will Ferrell movies worked very well because the main characters were the satirical characters, while the side characters would ground it a little bit. With the non-satirical main characters, it feels like Don't Look Up is putting you on a rocket ship straight to planet satire, but is then pulling you back down to Earth at the same exact time. There's like this fake TMZ-like talk show, or I guess it's kind of like The View maybe a little bit. And on the show, Jennifer Lawrence freaks out on TV because we're all gonna die, which is another really interesting topic to explore that no one really believes people who are highly emotional. But they barely touch on it. That just really happens in this scene, and then we move on. This movie just touches so many topics and doesn't explore any of them in depth, and that is the biggest issue here. I think the one topic that it covers and nails is the climate change topic, which is what this movie is mainly about. Obviously, I haven't mentioned that yet. It's just bogged down by the rest of these things that are really annoying, because at the end of the day, putting up a mirror to our society can be valuable and it can be funny, but by being out of touch and covering way too many topics, people don't trust the mirror that Adam McKay is holding up to us. It's like one of those funhouse mirrors. It actively complains about so many things that happen on the internet without having an understanding of why those things happen on the internet. Don't Look Up is a frustrating mess that is a mixture of McKay's old and new era, which just falls flat because of that. We definitely could have used a Ferrell satirical character here, in my opinion. Okay, I can sit here and criticize a movie all I want, but at the end of the day, an artist did put a lot of effort into this particular movie. So let's take a look at Adam McKay's transition from those Will Ferrell comedies to these political dramas and why exactly he decided to do that. So I pieced together McKay's story from multiple sources, but it was mainly from this piece on Vanity Fair by Joe Hagan. In the piece, McKay recalls a moment at therapy where he really started to realize maybe comedy movies aren't enough. That's when he began seeing Hollywood super therapist Barry Michaels. In his first session, McKay told Michaels he was having a recurring dream in which a bear was chasing him. It got to the point where the bear was trying to write me script notes, McKay says. I was getting these crudely written notes from the bear like, "Are you kidding me?" Michaels laughed at McKay. He goes, "Are you fucking for real?" He's like, "Your shadow is screaming at you." That was it. McKay says he felt a great weight lift off his shoulders, but what was the bear? There might have been a little part of me that's like, what the fuck are you doing? McKay recalls. Are you really doing what you should be doing? Are those little political elements in Talladega Nights really enough? McKay goes on to write The Other Guys, puts a whole political parable in it. No one notices, and then McKay decides, yeah, maybe these comedy movies aren't for me anymore. He then decides to make The Big Short and never look back to satisfy his need to make more politically direct films. This is when a creative breakup begins for Ferrell and McKay, as they simply have different interests in what kind of movies they want to make. Eventually, in 2019, they decide to also dissolve their production company together, Gary Sanchez Productions. In 2019, Ferrell and McKay finally released a joint statement announcing their split, saying, "The two of us will always work together creatively and always be friends, and we recognize we are lucky as hell to end this venture as such." But it wasn't exactly true. The last time they talked was a curt phone conversation agreeing to break up. I said, "Well, I mean, we're splitting up the company," recounts McKay, and he basically was like, "Yeah, we are." And basically was like, "Have a good life." And I'm like, fuck, Ferrell's never gonna talk to me again. So it ended not well. It did in fact end even worse after their company breakup in 2019. McKay began producing and casting for the show Winning Time on HBO, a show about the Lakers in the 1980s. And if you know Ferrell, you know he is a huge LA sports fan, and he wanted so badly to play the role of Lakers owner Jerry Buss in this show, but everyone did not feel like he was a good fit, so McKay ended up casting John C. Reilly in the lead role instead. Reilly is still really good friends with Ferrell, so he told Ferrell about it, and Ferrell was very upset. McKay expresses extreme regret about how he handled the situation. He knows that Ferrell deserved to hear it straight from him instead of John C. Reilly, and he doesn't blame Ferrell for not wanting to be friends anymore. But McKay still holds out hope that one day they can mend their friendship. So the why here may seem very complicated and messy, but at the end of the day, it's actually very simple. If Ferrell and McKay were on good terms, would we see a Step Brothers 2? The answer is no. McKay moved on even before him and Will Ferrell were fighting. He made The Big Short and Vice before Will Ferrell and him broke up their production company. If he made Step Brothers 2 or another general comedy movie, McKay would not be satisfying what he wants to make creatively. And we know the best creative projects come when the director would rather be making something else.
I used Adobe Premiere. I like to do a little weekend editing. I recently just cut 3 minutes out of Goodfellas.
Okay, so now that I've explored all of McKay's career, what is the answer to that thesis question? Does McKay need Will Ferrell to make his best movies? And the answer is yes and no. Yes, I do think McKay is a better writer of just pure comedy movies, and that is the type of movie he primarily made in the Will Ferrell era. I prefer Step Brothers to something like The Big Short. But there's a whole other factor here that makes it so the answer just isn't that simple. The why section of this video is extremely important to answering this question. And people may not like to hear this, but I think a McKay-Ferrell comedy would suck in 2024. In fact, their last movie together, a movie we have been ignoring this entire video, Anchorman 2, did unfortunately kinda suck. Art is at its best when it's made with love, vision, and full passion. Both McKay and Ferrell have moved on. So while I was disappointed in Don't Look Up, I am still a huge fan of someone creating something they love. And McKay is also making original movies, which goes a long way nowadays. I will definitely take a 2.5 star original movie over a 3-star IP-based movie almost any day. Despite my criticisms of his filmmaking, I truly respect McKay as a director. He knows what he wants to make and goes for it. I didn't make this for critics. I didn't make this for my career. I didn't make this to look cool. I didn't make this to be hotshot Joe director. So even though I wish his next movie would give me the same feeling I got when I first saw Anchorman or Step Brothers, I will still be in the theater waiting for whatever Adam McKay has to say next. Another one in the books. Thank you guys all for subscribing. I got over 100 subscribers from my last video, which is insane. I did not expect it to do that well. And a lot of you in the comments are asking for a sequel or a follow-up. There were a lot of good directors that I left off of that list that I definitely want to talk about in a sequel eventually. For now, I want to get through a couple of these video essay ideas, and then I can get to a sequel or an intermediate guide. Or even I want to do a beginner's guide to foreign filmmakers too. I think that'd be a really good idea. So please subscribe because I expect that type of video to be out sometime this year. And comment below, what was your favorite Adam McKay film or comedy film from the 2000s era? I really love 2000s comedies and I want to make more videos about it. So comment below what movie or director from the 2000s I should cover next. Thank you guys for watching and have a great day.